Hello, and welcome to Electrifying Growth, a podcast brought to you by Edison Partners. I'm Chris Sugden, managing partner here at Edison and your host. There are moments in a person or company's journey that are undeniably electric. The spark or sparks, if you will, that propel you or your company to new heights. With Electrifying Growth, we're here to have in-depth, real conversations with great leaders who have been there and done it before. Edison has been investing in high-growth technology companies for more than 35 years, and I have been here at Edison doing this investing piece for more than 20 years. We've led over 225 investments. We understand that it takes great leaders and visionaries to build market leaders. We are your support system, a CEO and management's entourage, if you will. Let's introduce this episode's guest. Hello, welcome to our latest edition of Electrifying Growth. I'm your host, Chris Sugden. Today, I'm really happy to have two guests with us instead of the usual one, a special episode where we've got founder of Fingercheck, Joel Kohn, joined by now originally named CEO Dan Kazan. Full disclosure, Edison was able to invest in Joel's company and work with Dan along the way of a transaction that we recently announced. A New York-based Fingercheck is a state-of-the-art, all-in-one workforce management platform targeting small and medium-sized businesses with deskless workers. As we talk about it on the podcast, we don't mean kind of COVID remote. We mean folks who are on their feet every day, think about construction or retail or healthcare kind of workers, if you will. Fingercheck was specifically designed to provide an all-in-one workforce management system for the sizable SMB market, again, with deskless team members, which is a complex part of the market, generally led by time-strapped entrepreneurs who are also running their businesses. 80% of the U.S. workforce performs their jobs away from a traditional desk across industries such as construction, property management, retail, healthcare, technical trades, and others. Analysts forecast this market to grow really significantly, 8 to 10% to over $5 billion over the next 4 or 5 years. What's really cool about what Joel built here, he built the business the old-fashioned way: grit, determination, and a clear vision for building payroll and time and attendance together. He'll talk a bit about that today. He was previously involved in a payroll company that his father had founded, and he saw the need to do more than payroll for both the worker and the business owner. And he began building Fingercheck with not only time and attendance, but the payroll capability. And now today, what we call the full workforce management platform. We're going to discuss the early days of Joel's journey, and it's pretty unique how he funded the business, which was not with outside capital. The company recently announced a growth financing. Again, full disclosure, Edison led that with co-investors Stepstone and Columbus Capital. Please go see the press release, which I think is a cool story. Dan Kazan, who's joining us not only here on the podcast, but as the company's first CEO beyond Joel. He and Joel were able to get to know each other over the course of a few months. Dan's experience is pretty remarkable. First with the Tribune Company, where he led several of the brands there, including Career Builder, Legacy.com, and Home Finder. Call him a real expert in SMB. And more recently, he was the CEO of Insurian and the CEO of Rewards Network, where he led successful exits at both companies. Under Dan Kazan's leadership and partnering with Joel, the company looks forward to deploying capital, growing its product and technology, and increasing its go-to-market. So today, we kind of call this episode Taking the Next Step. We'll hear from both Joel Kohn and Dan Kazan on their journey together. Joel Kohn and Dan Kazan, welcome to Electrifying Growth, and congratulations on your recent investment in the company. Joel and Dan, congratulations on your recent taking over as CEO of the business. Glad to have you today.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Excited to be here as well.
So as I read in the opener, Joel, you're the, I call you the consummate entrepreneur, or even the prototypical, kind of grit, vision, determination, and just kind of got after it. But I always think it's better to hear it in the founder kind of version, if you will, your own words of kind of how you began Fingercheck. I'd love you to talk a little bit about how you bootstrap the business, which we think is, really the mark of a true entrepreneur. But two, use hardware to create cash flow, which is pretty unique. You don't always see a software company able to make the transition from a hardware company, if you will. So your own words, just talk about the founding of Fingercheck and the journey, as I like to say, or you like to say, the 10 or 12-year overnight success.
Sure. So I worked for a local payroll company before I started, and I wanted to actually go ahead and develop some technology that is actually available for the bigger companies to bring this into the SMB market. And in order to develop the software, we all know we need funds to be able to hire people and take people. So I wanted to find a way where I can actually try to bootstrap myself, be my own decision maker. So I went out and found a company called Fingercheck, which is originally plan was to build a time and attendance system to small to mid-sized business market. As the company evolved, I decided to see the market heading into an all-in-one solution, took the company and developed the additional products needed for a full HCM suite for the deskless market. As we have developed a full solution for the deskless market and time and attendance, we are able to take that all the way to financial, being able to do that as we went along. Fast forward development, year after year, we decided to keep developing additional products. In 2020 is where we actually have developed the product completely, trying to go ahead and expand. We took in a board to advise us and expanding the company, build a management team, put a solid headcount in the company, be able to expand that leadership.
How did you even think about, a biometric reader? How'd you find them? Just a little bit more on the sort of the true innovation, if you will, of just finding a business model that could scale without raising much money.
So at that time, I was in the payroll service industry. I was looking into similar markets, kind of, which I knew how to attract. And buddy punching was a very common thing at that time, where people were trying to make sure people don't steal time. So at that time, buddy punch solution was to buy a biometric reader together with a packaged software to be able to get the time and attendance. The challenge was, how do I take that to a SaaS model where people can be on the road, be anywhere they want, to see the data in real time? That was the challenge, where I found that hardware company and said, you know what, I'm going to package this with a SaaS product to be able to build that together.
Charge a little more, get some cash flow, and off you went.
And be able to build that subscription software. So.
And yes, it's meant to be sarcastic or a bit of a joke, but 12-year overnight success. So many companies are tooling away, cranking, and, as I mentioned in the opener, but also tell the audience to go check out the press release about the company and the transaction. Full disclosure, Edison has the pleasure of investing in both, Joel's company and now Dan, helping Joel lead the company. So a little bit of context here, if you jump right into Fingercheck. Dan, I joked before, hired gun's probably not what you want to be called, but professional CEO, scale CEO, something like that. You've got a great track record from that perspective. But I'd love to hear, he's done this a couple of times, stepping into founder-led businesses. And I'm going to come back to Joel, sort of on how he got comfortable. It's time to kind of, in the next chapter, have someone like you come in. But talk about your background and how you've approached these opportunities, because I think, if I got it right, this is the third time around for you to kind of step into a business like this that is taken to the next level, if you will.
Yeah, that's correct. I think it's important when I step into these type of businesses. First of all, I've had the fortunate circumstance that all the businesses have been good businesses, right? It's not a question of taking a bad business and turning it around. It's really a question of taking a good business and making it better. And Fingercheck obviously fits that bill, 100%. They're doing so well now that, doing even better is a lot of pressure. But, I enjoy that pressure. And really, when I come in, I like to look at what's the company doing well, right? And what does the company need to improve upon? And that's true of every company, right? All the way up to companies that have market caps, so, in the billions of dollars. There's not any company where they can't improve on things. And I think that when somebody like me comes in, I'm not a payroll expert like Joel, which gives me the advantage of being able to ask a lot of questions that may seem like dumb questions, but, within there will be some nuggets of things that, oh gosh, maybe we never thought of things that way. And I think that's through that process of working with the existing team, inevitably bringing on other team members as the company grows, right? More resources are needed, different areas of expertise are needed. And I think continuing to ask questions and continuing to think about improving is really the key to success in these type of things.
Love it. I appreciate you said it, because, Edison is focused on growth, frankly, businesses. And to your point, Dan, our ability to partner with you and Joel on the existing team to then take it to the next level, I think that's well put. Sort of, it's not something that's in anywhere near a turnaround. This is a growth business that's just going to grow faster to bigger and better things, because it's amazing what, Joel, you've accomplished. Joel, back to you. You know, in the opener, I talked about how you build and scaled the company as well. When we, met you, you were pretty clear. I'm not going to be the CEO going forward, which isn't always Edison's game plan or playbook, if you will. We often partner with founder CEOs, and maybe it's a couple of years and then a Dan comes in. So there's a two-way street on sort of how are you really comfortable that you're sure you want to turn over the reins, and how are we going to be comfortable with finding the right person? But Joel, from your perspective, how did you get comfortable that it was the right time, if you will, to maybe have someone else lead the business, be it Dan or anybody else? Just sort of how did you, in your own mind, get to that place?
I know my qualifications. I know how good I am. I'm great to found the company from zero to build it where we took the company to. I run a company as a founder mode, which is kind of a lot in the weeds kind of thing. In order to be a CEO of the company where we are at this stage of the game, you need to be at a high level, like Dan said. We may not even know payroll out of the box, but knowing how to lead and being able to expand. And that's not me to take that. And that was my decision. And then I was glad that Edison took that as a pro thing, building together going forward.
Love it. So we like to say it's sort of about, making something good better, making something, great, if you will. And Dan, we had the good fortune of being introduced to you by one of our, what we call the Edison Director Network. And Corey Ferngul sort of said, hey, there's this guy, Dan Kazan, I know in the Chicago area. And we kind of called you and said, will you help us with some diligence? We're looking at this business focused on the SMB market, which good and bad, right? SMB market's huge, hard to find them. Sometimes churn can be a challenge, which Fingercheck's very fortunate to not have that kind of issue. It's a really solid, sticky kind of customer base. When do you start to think that maybe there was something more to this than just a DD assignment, as they say, in terms of, as Edison and you were kind of working with Joel and his management team? And I guess that's an obvious question for what kind of made it exciting and stuck out for you as something that might be worth the next several years of a run here.
The thing about Fingercheck that became apparent fairly quickly was the product market fit. A lot of companies at this stage have done well, bootstrap themselves, as Joel said, he's been in founder mode, just making things happen. In a lot of cases, that is kind of the limit, right, of where a company's going to get for various reasons. And sometimes it's that the product is kind of at its, max. And in Fingercheck's case, it couldn't be more opposite than that. The product was specifically built for companies that employ a lot of deskless workers or exclusively deskless workers. And the market's huge for that. But also the product works for those type of companies. And so that got me very excited. The company has a very nice revenue under its belt and really hasn't yet marketed nationwide. And so that I thought was a huge opportunity and one that would be very fun to work on.
Yes, everyone wants to know numbers, and we're going to be careful not to disclose things that are just right now confidential, but this likes to invest in companies between 10 and 50 million in revenue. And the beautiful thing is, having literally raised no institutional capital in this age of unicorns and people bragging about how much they've raised rather than how much they've accomplished with how little they've raised. I think, Joel, again, I use the consummate entrepreneur of having pulled that off, but to say the sweet spot of profitable growth in kind of the Edison sweet spot, it's really a cool opportunity. And I couldn't agree with you more, Dan. Joel, you're a builder of tech, of product, but as you said, go to market's not where you've necessarily focused. And as Dan said, the company's made a lot of hay. Yes, it has employees in all the states, but its customers are pretty concentrated in the Northeast. So that's a really interesting opportunity. I'm going to turn the question that was sort of similar to Dan back to you. We entered this not necessarily saying, hey, Dan's the CEO. It was like, he's a partner helping us do due diligence. We have another operating partner or two that are helping us do due diligence. But at some point we started to gain some comfort. Things started to happen. And we also talked about you're never having a boss, or not for a long time. The other day, just sort of going, this will be interesting to see how this kind of works. I know it's difficult being on the same kind of talking to each other here, but What gives you some comfort that Dan would be a good fit and this has a good shot at working, if you will? Because there's always that risk in having just met somebody to then hand your baby over to, if you will.
When I met Dan the first time, I had a conversation, I think it was 2 or 3 hours talking to each other. What I noticed from him was the fact that he has a lot of SMB experience and the way he actually represented himself, knowing the industry, not the payroll industry specifically, knowing how SaaS works, what his values is. It's triggered to me right away that this is the guy that actually can take this company to where it needs to be in the next growth chapter of Fingercheck.
Someone who maybe would have presented themselves with a little bit more, I hate to use the word ego, but over sort of look out, get out of my way, probably would have been the best fit, I'm guessing, for you and Fingercheck. What about that sort of level of the personality, what you were looking for in a partner? Because you really are going to be a partnership here as we go forward.
The way he actually is calm. I mean, somebody's coming into a company not knowing anything, and just the way we talk and every conversation is okay. Taking in notes and notes of what things is and kind of understanding everything is something that tells me this is the person that can actually take this responsibility and cherish what I have built till now and take it further.
That struck me, Dan, about you as well, because we've only met a few months ago. One of my favorite investments is they had lots of things on the walls, like values, et cetera. And they would say, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in proportion. This strikes me about you. You asked a lot of questions. Talk a little bit about that. Is that intentional? Is that learned over time of working with these companies? Kind of that approach of listen first and speak second, if you will?
Well, it certainly is both intentional and learned over time. When you're younger, sometimes you want to do all the talking. In business, in these type of situations, and really any situation, it's good to know the facts and listen to other people's opinion to help inform your own. Call it a skill or a trait, and that certainly I've had to work on and learn over the years, but I think it's very important. I always tell people I don't have a monopoly on all the good ideas. And in fact, I'm probably as far from that as you can be. But I think skill set for anyone is if you can spend the time and really listen and hear, frankly, what somebody is saying and get a whole bunch of opinions under your belt, it's going to make your decision-making process better.
Amen to that. As we think about, Joel, you were starting to talk about, you built a board, as I was going back to the founding story, it was just a few years ago where you kind of leaned in, if you will. You call it a board of advisors, but it really functioned a lot like a board of directors. So this is a question actually, both of you, Joel, you first, that sort of forming the board, knowing you needed, for lack of a better word, people around you that could maybe ask you hard questions. I know you had a couple of board members and one specifically that kind of became a bit of a role model and almost a mentor. Talk just a little bit about how you came across those people, how you found them, how you used them, because I think this applies going forward from this journey to, a much bigger company as well. And Dan, we'll come back to you on boards and how you've seen them function well. But Joel, you first, because not all entrepreneurs, frankly, want to be bothered by boards, especially when you're the owner of the business. So just talk about your journey of forming that.
And I said before, in 2021, 2020's COVID hit, I passed the COVID era. I knew that I just can't take it again further by myself. And I figured we have to get people in kind of having that formally board, even though it wasn't, like I said, a formal board, but they have to act as a board. Like I was the founder and knew what I was doing by myself, but I needed to be able to build a management team, scale, and all that experience. So I actually had my brother Jacob introduce me to Shane Kim, and we actually had a conversation, kicked it off pretty well. And I decided to move along with Shane and Sherry Ahuma, which was actually involved with Jacob in another company. We formed a board to be able to build that management team and attract people, talent to the company. And that actually is when the turning point had. The plan was to double the revenue in the next 2 years. And it actually happened to be triple the revenue in the next 3 years, which actually happened. And we did scale and management teams and all other areas in the company where we needed to expand. And that worked pretty well for us to be able to get where we were.
I was struck by, and during, again, I'll refer to like your diligence and your different board members, how much of a trusting relationship you and Shane had developed over time. And I frankly thought it must have been a 10-year relationship. It was only like a 3-year relationship, which is pretty remarkable. What is it that he did that quickly garnered that trust? And I'll even say vice versa, because frankly, we see a lot of entrepreneurs who there is a little bit of, I've got all the answers and don't want to be bothered with people pushing me. And so I'm kind of curious how you develop that trusting relationship to have someone who could push you a bit and maybe get you out of your comfort zone.
Well, one thing that I have for me is respect. I like when Shane knew his lane, kind of, when it came to technology, for example, which is something that I excel pretty good. He actually respected my decisions and my advice where I went to, and vice versa on the other side, where he actually excelled in growth and someone else that worked pretty well. And once I become a team member with the other person, we respect that way as well to him. And then it became a fun kind of environment where we were kind of joking, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he was kind of contributing, and it becomes just a journey as a friend. It wasn't a formal kind of, okay, this is the 2 hours we're going to spend on a board and that's it. It was kind of develop a relationship with time as we went along. That's what pretty helped me with everyone on the board and everyone else within the teams.
You use your word of respect for not only with Shane or Sherry and obviously frankly with your brother. We see that a lot, like families are really super, friends of Joel, but Shane wasn't someone you knew, and even Sherry, others had worked with her, but kudos to you. And I think those who listen to this podcast, I think about lessons from entrepreneurs who've, at one level scaled it, but want to keep scaling it. And I think your sort of openness to having Shane and Sherry, kind of push you a bit is going to bode well for the future as well. The next chapter, if you will. Dan, coming back over to you relative to kind of boards. You've seen this movie, like you talked about a few times or a couple times. There's good boards, there's bad boards, there's good board hygiene, there's bad board hygiene. This will be good because we'll have our new board listening to this when you tell us what we will do well and what you're going to try to avoid from your prior experiences. Just talk about how you view, how boards can be helpful to the growth stage of a business.
Yeah. So first of all, I've sat on about 11 boards throughout my career, and they've been kind of companies all over the board. So I do have a fair amount of experience. I've sat on some bad boards, which, oftentimes you learn the most about things that aren't working well.
Unfortunately, that's very true.
Yeah. But I think that there's a couple things that are very important from my perspective anyway, that make up a good board. Joel said it just now. One is respect for each other. The CEO and the management team have jobs to do. The board's, monitoring, holding them accountable, helping them. But the relationship has to be a good back and forth, right? An us versus them relationship does not work well. And that comes down to really respect and open communication, right? Management isn't trying to hide anything from the board. And at the same time, the board isn't running the business on a day-to-day basis. I think if that's well understood, but there's open communication channels and respect, I think the boards should work very well. The other thing I think is very important on the board is to have different perspectives. I don't think, Chris, you'd want to have a board that's all investors. And likewise, by the way, believe it or not, I've been on a board that was almost all operators. That didn't work either. So people come at the problems differently. They are used to solving problems and having different goals within a business. And so I do think it's important to have as many different viewpoints as possible on the board.
There's almost a plug there, having networked with us before. I feel strongly a balance, to your point, is important. I would say we lean towards those who have kind of been there and done it for boards versus investors. But you're right, just a bunch of people who think it's all about just having been there and done it. Where's the pattern recognition? As investors, we see a lot of patterns and we're trying to bring that to the table. But to your point, listening and respect is there. We do believe, as you guys are about to experience, you kind of have the benefit of the Edison and our co-investors all the time. So how can we bring other people who've kind of been there to the table? And so keeping what's working, having Shane stay on the board with Joel on the board, having a couple from our operating partner who've kind of been there in sales and people, and then just finding people who have sort of seen the domain. So we're big believers in kind of a diversity. And I think the good news is, Joel, you've experienced what a good board looks like. Dan has too. So we all kind of know what we're looking for, which is pretty awesome. I want to come back to Joel here for is it DNA? Is it learned? The taking risks. You literally said, I'm going to go build this thing. We talked about kind of the bootstrapping, how you raise some capital, with a unique business model, if you will. But was it watching father, brothers, family members? Was it, no, I was born with this sort of entrepreneurial gene in my body? What is it you think got you to this point in building a business?
It's the entrepreneurial spirit is something that you got to be born with. Being able to take something from zero and to build something is something that you have to have the patience and the capability to do. Some people would not even look at that side because it's too low and too cumbersome and time consuming and everything else. And I love that. I love to take something from zero to something. So when you look at the end results where you have thousands of clients using a product that you've built with your own 10 fingers is something that is talking to me like nothing else. And that's what I like about that.
What was the moment or the time when you knew you had something that could be really valuable versus an interesting business?
That's when we launched the payroll product, part of time and attendance. Then I saw we're heading a direction that is differentiator in the market. And I saw that that's going to make a difference of changing things around.
Dan, I'm thinking about, we know payroll is kind of crowded, but you combine something, Joel, with, we're now calling it workforce management. Others are, we're using Deskless workforce management. What would be interesting, Dan, from your perspective, having, seen this movie only a few months ago, kind of, with us, the Deskless workers kind of unique. There's these unicorns kind of focusing on kind of the tech worker and, making noise around that. But I like that there's both the needs of the employee and the employer being met by what Fingercheck does. But Dan, in your own, I'll say words, put you on the spot a bit. What do you think is kind of special here about the opportunity to build a big company?
I think that the product is terrific. Like you said, it is a kind of soup to nuts human resources capital management type of software, right? And that's probably done pretty well with the large clients and large enterprises, but it's very likely, and I've learned from Joel, it isn't done well within the smaller, the SMB marketplace. And SMB, by the way, small and medium-sized businesses, is a very broad term, right? It could be the guy that's got 2 employees, 5 employees, all the way up to somebody that has about 200 employees and is what we would all think of as a pretty substantial business. The key there is, in many cases, the entrepreneur, founder, CEO of that small business, their passion lies elsewhere, in that their passion is not dealing with human capital management. And so the idea here is, and I think that the promising kind of, market fit here is anything that we could do through our software to make their lives easier and to enable them to focus on their passion is going to be valuable in the marketplace. And I think that in the case of Fingercheck, it's a question of people knowing that Fingercheck exists and that the software exists. That's really the limit here. And obviously it's a big market. People don't know about the software yet. And we're going to get to that point to create a very large and sustainable company.
Joel, when you think about, there's a hot topic, earned wage access, and our kind of employee would like to get paid faster. Somehow the United States system of paying our employees is like the company kind of lives off the employees funding our business and working capital. We pay them in arrears. People are familiar with this earned wage access thing. It's gotten some regulatory scrutiny. The bottom line is there's some big businesses now have been created, but the bottom line is really getting the employees' money to them on a more regular basis or faster. Shane actually used this word. I'm not sure whether he gets credit or you do, but kind of real-time payroll and what the opportunity might present in the future, how you see it. Kind of think about the employee and maybe kind of where the market's going to go, kind of the hockey analogy where the puck's going, not where it's been. How do you think this is going to develop? And is it fair to say Fingercheck can do real-time payroll? Is that an overstatement?
No. So the way we're thinking about it is the current payroll model, the way it works is biweekly, weekly, and semi-monthly. It's an outdated model that has worked years ago, was implemented years ago, and it doesn't even attract the current financial market and current everything else. It just doesn't make sense that an employee has to wait for payroll to wait for their money. And what we're looking to do is, the main problem is that the tax code currently right now is on a weekly, biweekly model. So the problem is, how do you bridge that gap to the actual needs of the current market?
The tax code's outdated to service that need.
Exactly. So how do you bridge that market? And that's where we come in with the technology that we have built in Play to be able to build a real-time payroll calculation that when an employee starts working in the morning, clocks out at night, being able to take home their full net pay, exactly what the number would be at the end of the week of everything else, including to take on calculating the proper taxes, calculating the garnishments, calculating everything that needs to be done. And the payroll industry is going to change. And I think we are pioneers when it comes to that, because we have built the engine from the ground up to be able to build calculations on the fly.
I think it's pretty interesting because I sort of agree with you. You know, like financial institutions or financial services or fintechs providing really, they look at what employees made the last 3, 4, 10 payrolls, and they do a calculation to figure out what would not be at risk. Whereas we're talking about actual paying them on a very frequent basis. And of course, that's going to take some employers to get comfortable with working capital being different, but certainly have a happier employee base, especially if they don't have to pay maybe the same size fees or the kind of things that are out there in the market. So TBD, but I think it's pretty unique what you all have built. Now, I guess I can say we, since we're in this together, but I think this is one of those things that you ahead of your time, but not so far ahead of your time where it's, you know, kind of bleeding edge. It feels cutting edge to me. Dan, I'll come back to, I teased you about saying hired gun too many times or saying it even once, but I just did it again. How do you think about the people equation? Like you're walking into this thing that Joel, and he is the COO, that Tiffany that he hired a couple of years ago to help build the business, and they feel strongly about those people, and you're this new guy, and who the heck are you? How have you approached these prior experiences? How do you think about, you know, the next month or two is months to get folks comfortable with who you are?
I think in these type of situations, and anytime you're a new CEO, regardless really of the situation, people is priority number one. This is a successful company already. It got that way through the people. And so I'm new, I'm the new guy. And they've got to get to know me, that I'm a regular human being, not, you know, some ogre that came in or some quote unquote hired gun and to do something nasty. Right. And, our goals are the same. Right. You know, what I found over the years is everybody ultimately wants to do well and have the company do well. But really what they want to have is the feeling that what they do every day at work matters towards achieving that goal. And so, you know, it takes a while to get to know people, but that's a very important aspect that is most of my focus, frankly, for several months when I start at place.
This mantra of people first, you know, firms like ours, I'll say some larger PE firms, the playbooks kind of rule the day. And as we know, there's a lot of what got you here won't get you there. Joel, you've experienced that over the last few years, and you know that's going to happen the next few years forward. But if there's not that trust and putting the people first, the playbooks really don't matter. So I appreciate you saying that way, Dan. I want to go back to the deskless worker. COVID created this deskless worker, this remote and hybrid and all that nonsense. But Joel, that's not what we mean. You guys both can take this in your own words, but maybe Joel first. Did you know it was the deskless worker when you first started the company, or was it anybody who had workers or employees that were your target market? Or did you kind of, I hate to say, stumble into this as a unique market opportunity? And then talk about, maybe just define it a little bit too.
Deskless worker means employees that are hourly on the field, on the go, and don't have a desk. They're moving around all the time. That goes for the employees. And at the same time, most of the time, specifically in the SMB market, it goes to the employer as well, because usually the employer is the CEO, CFO, and everything else. And he's moving around, helping his crews across the different job sites or something else where they're working. And when I started the time and attendance solution, we actually built a robust time and attendance solution, and it ended up working for these type of markets. So I saw we actually did that to serve that market. And that's what we went in all in and expanded that market. And that's what actually worked for us across the line and developing additional products and additional solutions for this market.
That's excellent. Dan, double click a little bit. The verticals that we think are kind of the most obvious, or the markets that are most obvious for this deskless worker, as Joel just described it.
Yeah, you know, and these are often, as I mentioned before, probably underserved as it relates to technology solutions for their businesses. But the things I think about, and I think the company's been very successful with, are construction, property management, home healthcare, the trades, things of that nature, where workers don't go into an office. And like you said, having nothing to do with COVID, they never went into an office. And I think, the other thing that we haven't mentioned is for those type of workforces, scheduling is a big headache, right, for the people that are running the businesses. And again, the Fingercheck software and what Joel's built has scheduling built in. And importantly, scheduling on a mobile first basis, right? You could look at your phone and know where people are, or if you're the employee, know where you're supposed to be. And I think that's very important.
First of all, to the point of these people have always been out on their feet, having to go to work. Frankly, they make the U.S. economy go. It's sort of a political season. Everyone's talking to the forgotten worker, but this worker does get forgotten by technology, and so does the business owner. So I think it's kind of cool. We got this company founded in Bronx, New York. New York's well served for capital, but the Bronx necessarily isn't. This worker, this employee who makes the United States economy work, I think the number is 8 out of 10 or more U.S. workers work in small businesses. So that's, pretty interesting. But the bottom line is, I think tech, as you said, Dan, tends to lag this particular market. At least that's where we hope we're right about that, because we're going to go bring them a bunch of great tech. And also, Joel built something that was kind of mobile first. When you think about this worker, it's got to be mobile because they're literally not in front of a desk. So hopefully the opportunity is pretty clear to everybody. But even the sort of the aha moments that came along as Joel sort of found them, it's not always a straight line up and to the right, but in a lot of cases for Joel, the last few years have been. As we wrap this up, I like to ask these questions, something similar or derivative of it. For Joel, again, I mentioned you as the consummate entrepreneur. Biggest surprise in starting a company? Good surprise, bad surprise? You can even share 2 if you want, but I'm kind of curious. Again, 12-year overnight success, as you look back, what's kind of one of those moments or a couple that stick out?
You build a plan. You think it's going to go the right way. You find out everything that you wrote, you can throw it away and build the opposite way. That's what it is. You got to be able to deal with the punches every single day. Every single day you think, oh, today I'm going to wake up, everything is going to be fine. And all of a sudden the bank calls you, this is the problem, this could be the problem. And you got to run around to different departments and you got to be able to do that. And that's kind of a surprise that an entrepreneur has to see and has to know that this is what you sign up for, to build something good. But at the end of the day, when you see the results, it's kind of rewarding that this is something that you want and you have built. You look back and say, you know what, it was worth it.
My business, and I think Dan would say the same thing, we don't exist without people like you, because someone's got to take the chance and not see only risk at the beginning. This blank sheet of paper, like I said, you write a plan down and it's going to change. It's a question of, can you change fast enough and stay ahead of it? But you had a few stories when we were getting to know each other. The bank one I know sticks out, something you didn't expect. The bank doesn't process payroll and all the customers are like, I got to get my employees paid. I mean, these are things entrepreneurs do that people just don't appreciate. You kind of live and breathe it. And I know it's also every day, right? It's like, not like there's a set of business hours. There's it's a constant battle. So thank you for sharing that. And Dan, I was in the magazine business many, many, many moons ago. We had this great column. It was called When I Was 25. And we did interview celebrities or politicians or people with big profiles. And they kind of write their own version of this. And I like to turn that question around. It's not at all intended to be a question about what would I do different. It's more like, if only I knew then what I know now. What would you say to that question of, if I, knew then what I know now?
Yeah, I'd say 2 things. One, I'd emphasize the importance of continuing to learn and continuing to improve yourself, right? A lot of people, they're done with college or graduate school, they get a job, they get stagnant. First of all, I don't think that'd be a very exciting lifestyle. But secondly, I just think it's super important to continue to learn and grow, both professionally and personally. The second thing I would say is trust yourself. And what I mean by that is, don't be afraid to get outside your comfort zone and do things that you want to do, but don't feel you're qualified for. I guarantee most everybody out there that they're qualified for more than they realize.
I love that one. I think it was my second startup a board member, and I wasn't the CEO, I was the COO, and the board member sort of said, you just got to do everything until someone tells you to stop. And I wasn't qualified to do everything. I'm not even sure I was qualified to be COO. So I think that's fantastic advice for frankly, young and older people. Well, listen, to both of you, first, Joel Kohn, CEO of Fingercheck. I'm looking forward to the partnership with you as we build the business together from here, because you certainly build a successful one. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to partner with you. And Dan Kazan, no pressure, because, you and I together have got to go help Joel take this to the next level and build a huge company. But I really appreciate the learnings you guys have both shared with this audience. And I do look forward to, version 2 or part 2 of this chat to see where this movie is a year from now. So we're going to have this Fingercheck part 2, if you will, down the road. But thank you both for your time and for all your learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining this episode of Electrifying Growth. A special thanks to this week's guest for sharing their time and insight. For more resources, inspiration, and a look inside the Edison Partners Network, sign up for our newsletter at www.edisonpartners.com. Click on the Stay in the Know button in the top right corner of our webpage. Thank you again.